Hey, it's Matt from Gravity Forms. Today's video is all about Gravity Flow. I sat down with Jamie for a Gravity Forms webinar, which you can find at the learn.gravity.com website. And we explored how to use Gravity Flow with Gravity Forms, especially if you're an agency owner and helping somebody build some kind of bespoke workflow or application for Gravity Forms. Gravity Flow slots in really well for that kind of solution. Either way, you'll learn more about it in today's video. Here we go with a little insight into the webinar with Gravity Flow and Gravity Forms. Today we're talking about Gravity Flow for Gravity Forms. As always, you'll find the recording of this webinar on our learn.gravity.com website. Today, we're covering Gravity Flow. You can find Gravity Flow at gravityflow.io. Not gravityflow.com, that's like a plumbing site. Gravityflow.io will get you access to a lot of the stuff, or all of the stuff that we're talking about today. All of the resources, all of the docs, all of the extensions, gravityflow.io. Jamie, I'll kick it over to you. What is Gravity Flow? Who's it for? Who's it going to help?
I'd be remiss if I didn't say everyone, but truthfully, where it started out from and where the people find its most easiest way to understand is what happens after your customers submit a form entry. So if someone's an agency right now, whether they have feeds that are executing on their form, they tend to things happen right away, but there isn't any ongoing conversation. So Gravity Flow is trying to give you more flexibility and control in terms of what happens after the entry is submitted. What I'm going to go through here in a minute is looking at an example where you have some approval actions, whether that's for your staff or kicking back to the form submitter. If you just want to coordinate API calls to different third-party systems, but you need to have data that comes from one system feed into another. To do that purely with Gravity Forms, you'd be relying on a fair amount of PHP code, and it would be form and entry specific. So Gravity Flow is really trying to lower the technical complexity to do complex things.
And this also introduces a bit, I mean, we're in a world of like AI and automation and all that fun stuff, but Gravity Flow introduces like the human into some of this stuff, right? Into the workflow. Like a human needs, like you're building something for a customer or a client for your organization, and it involves a human to read it and go, yes, we're going to do this. No, we're not going to do that in its most basic form, yes or no. And a user can actually interact with that step, and that step will then trigger something else to happen in the world of Gravity Forms. Fair assessment to say it brings in that human touch to this stuff?
That is definitely one of the core features that people start out using. There's also the idea that if you're making an API request to go to some third-party system and something goes wrong, you can route that back to a step in the workflow and have a user investigate and say, what do we need to do to get this thing back on track? At the sort of agency and enterprise side of things, it's about building your business process and making that efficient for your staff to do the tasks they need to without spending a lot of time digging through Excel files that are downloaded or finding the latest version of something in their email. It really is your WordPress website with Gravity Forms and Flow. You have dedicated inboxes that are specific to the tasks you're working on, or entire ones for your users that regularly access the system to see all of their entries across all of their different forms. So I figured, Matt, given your podcasting background, there's an article that we released on the Gravity blog yesterday or on Friday showing how Gravity Flow can be used for podcasts. And I figured it'd be a good example to kind of follow along and make some changes to. Let's start with where customers that are used to Gravity Forms would already be familiar that they have to submit a example website form. As soon as they submit that first entry and they put in a valid email address, which it looked like I had, and we may have, nope, just data entry issues. So what's happened behind the scenes is that the workflow has started and looks at what's involved in the steps in the workflow. I'm not going to go into that part to begin with, other than to show if you're used to going in and editing feeds and settings in the form, you're going to find Gravity Flow very familiar. If I refresh this page, and this is purely sort of for the admin side, I can see this first entry is an approval step that we need to triage. So I've assigned this already to one of our staff. And so I can log in on the back end. There's a whole other inbox that I can see this specific entry. And there's controls that define what fields are visible and what fields are editable. So in this case, I can add some additional details to the conversation. And that's a discussion field that is coming from Gravity Flow as well. This step type of an approval gives me two options out of the box for whether I want to approve it or reject it. And we can have some controls as to who it's assigned to complete. There are permission settings where you can say, does everyone need to approve this? Or does just one that has the user list or the role that's assigned? The idea with this podcast sponsorship form is that we just want to rule out this isn't spam or it's something that's of such low value, it's not worth our time. So initially, we're going to approve that message. And then in the bottom of this admin screen, you can see that there's a timeline, and we can see what's actually happened to the entry from the date and time it was submitted, as well as approval rejections and anything else that a step completes in the workflow. On this default admin view, you can see all of that information. So as I look on the workflow sidebar, I can see that it's now on a different step, and it's assigned back to that email user. So you're mentioning Gravity SMTP. One of the really nice features that integrates so well with it for testing Gravity Flow is that our demo environments aren't actually sending out any of the emails that the system would be from any of those steps in the workflow. But for assigning a step to an email address, it's essential that you're able to test, does this do what you want? And are the links that I've put in with merge tags in the form available? So I can choose to open this message that went to this test user in a new incognito window. You might have briefly saw up there was a secure token that verifies that email address was what is used to open this page. And while this is looking similar to an initial form submission, we've now got different sets of fields that we can upload or provide attachments to. The layout of this is slightly different than Gravity Forms because we're in the context of completing that workflow.
In this example, right, as let's say a podcaster, certainly not of my stature, right? Somebody that's going to have a team of people with a lot of things happening. I think what we've seen here, at least in this first few steps of this Gravity Flow, is company comes into your website, they submit the form. Hey, we want to sponsor this podcast. If it's a big podcast or it's a team, that notification is going to appear in WordPress, and they'll get the email notification. Hey, somebody has submitted this sponsorship request or this application, if you will. Somebody from the team logs in and says, let me review that. And actually, let me add some notes, or let me just say whether or not this is the right fit for our podcast and our sponsorship. And they have this opportunity now to say, yes, this is somebody that is fit for sponsoring our podcast. Apply some notes so that other people on the team can see it, or maybe hit no, it's not a good fit. And then what will happen next is we'll go to the next step in the Gravity Flow, where it can begin to interact with the rest of the organization or do things like send out a form to that sponsor.
You probably now are seeing a sponsorship inbox that looks a little bit different than you were before.
Yep.
Okay. So that's opened up just from the email link in Gravity SMTP. You have options as a user input step to save or submit. So if you're saving, it's not running any required field validation. It means that, if they've got a question of the ad copy, they can come back and work at it iteratively. There are setting options that you can have steps expire. So if you need to have a very date-oriented workflow process, you can configure that. But as soon as they hit submit, the entry goes back to its workflow, figures out what's based off the data that's been input, the next step in the workflow. And as a staff, I can come back in to my inbox and see that this is now back to us for assignment. And just to show a slight difference there, if I go to the front end where we started, you can also set up with either blocks or short codes, a dedicated inbox on the front end. So this one's been configured so that it's only showing ones for the sponsorship form. And you have some controls as to what fields show up in those columns. Where this really starts to show itself, and it's been configured in this demo example, you're not sending out emails to your staff to do all these things because they're getting them so frequently. They know just to go to this page and see what all of their assigned tasks are. So we've got some instructions that you can set up per step. We can say whatever the amount that needs to be provided, the terms and conditions that are put in here. And the next step that's going to happen in this workflow is that Gravity Flow has a PDF extension, and you can create a branded PDF that pulls in different fields from your entry into whatever sort of layout that you want. So as I come back again, this is now going in the next step to Gravity, back to the email user. And so in the email, we've given them a direct link to download that PDF file. We've got in sort of their logo and branding, and there's a lot of the sort of boilerplate idea that would be in a contract, but we've pulled in what are the dollar values that come from some of the fields and what they would have written in as to the actual details of this sponsorship opportunity. And then the last in the demo is that when I come back to that and choose that I actually want to confirm that agreement, that I'm ready to go ahead, it's now asking me that I want to approve. There's configuration options. If something is either a high dollar value or it's a significant thing, if you approve or reject, you can use the browser confirmation to be very sure. And then if it was appropriate, having Stripe payment that kicks them out to a test environment, which I won't go through the rest of for this one. But that Stripe step is really valuable because if you think of just doing an initial submission for something like logo design or contract work or anything where freelancers or agencies are completing the task, but they don't know the dollar value when the initial form submit, you can push that as far back in the workflow as is appropriate to execute. And it gives you the flexibility to use user input steps to define what the price for those things that are going to show up into the payment to the customer are. If agencies are trying to justify to their customers how this will be a value for them versus just seeing, here's another plugin cost, looking at those processes and trying to understand how long does it take your employees to complete the process in whatever form they do now, and being able to highlight, you're going to cut out 10 minutes for having to generate that invoice to go to Stripe and click the links and do the things. Or in the PDF creation, I've worked with some customers in Gravity Experts where conservatively it was about an hour and a half for each entry when they needed to pull in different attachment files. And the PDF just creates that for them instantaneously. So they go right on to their approval step. So looking at things from the time that the manual activity is taken besides the actual decision-making sort of business logic is a quick way to demonstrate to the customers that there's value in that. From an agency perspective, you can build a very sticky relationship.
When would somebody, this is a self-serving question because I often think of it myself when I work on some Gravity Flow stuff. What's the use case for people being able to edit a field, right? So I think we can set up permissions in that workflow. When would somebody be modifying that data in Gravity Forms? And do we build off of that? Like, do we build workflows off of that?
So there's two different things that come up. In this case, you saw they were providing that add copy in a step rather than at the initial form. So we've used the visibility of this fields to say it's administrative. And then in the steps, you can control which fields are editable. The two sort of common things that I think you're getting at is either if a staff member or the assignee is reviewing and changing what the initial person submit, maybe it's an ad copy, and they have a particular way that the podcast host would speak. They want to get that drafted, so they go back and forth with the sponsor to edit that. The other side, though, is that because you have fields that are controlled that only your staff can see, in the workflow, if I come back to any of the ones that I've got open and active right now, one of our other demos is a help desk setup. You could have a field that is only available to the assignees on steps when it's assigned to your staff. So you can kind of have that internal chat separate from the what the customer sees in their status details. And you can use either radio button and drop down fields to drive the workflow logic with the conditional logic that I was showing earlier. Or you could start to tie in with some of the extensions and the flexibility that Gravity Flow provides with either its APIs, or what I was going for to look at here is the our custom step framework. So if an agency right now, there'd be a filter like Gravity Forms after submitted. If they're doing a lot of things there to say on this form, do this activity, bringing those into a custom step means that you no longer have to do the form specific logic there. You can define what settings are applicable to that step. And then within the workflow, it triggers when does that get executed and what does it do. So it tries to strike that balance between, you can do a heck of a lot with just approval steps and user input steps. But as I go back to the setting where I was adding steps, you can see that there are a lot of different step types that are available just with the forms or the plugins that I've got active in this environment right now. All of the different things with Stripe, you can choose when do those behave. And any feed-based add-ons that someone has active in their environment, you can control when do those get executed rather than being right immediately at the time of the form submission.
Yeah. Yeah. I like, again, going back to the whole like Stripe thing and, approving thing. I mean, this is also a way to get paid, right? If you're a freelancer agency owner, you can build out your own sort of, like deliverables, like, hey, we've got to stage 3 of the project. Do you approve what do you approve what you see here? And as soon as they hit yes, it then prompts them to, okay, make that third payment, to the team, which I really like. We can kind of build out these real custom things. That's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed a little glimpse into the webinar series that we do every month at learn.gravity.com. That's where you can find the full video of the Gravity Flow webinar with me and Jamie. You can find a bunch of other resources there, some crash courses, other videos. It's a great place to be. Check it out, learn.gravity.com. If you like today's video, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you want more, if you have questions, comments, leave them below. We'll see you in the next video.